Grammys under fire as Ariana Grande slams producers. The week in media bombshells. Why Jennifer Aniston and Brad Pitt are blowing up the internet, plus Liam Neeson's really bad week. All this and more on Meet the Hollywood Press for February 10th, 2019. I'm Alina Vission, and now your host of Meet the Hollywood Press, Joseph Kapsch.
Happy Sunday, everybody, on a very wet and like a little bit like kind of dreary LA Grammy Sunday. Welcome back, Alina.
Thank you.
It's not welcome back. It's like good afternoon, Alina.
Happy Sunday, fun day.
Yeah, exactly. I want to break into a very quick shout out to. Wait a minute. I just totally lost my train of thought. Guys, I'm sorry. Let me just introduce my guests right now. Really great that we're on Facebook Live for the first time, and I'm totally dropping my my intro. Without further ado, I want to welcome back to Meet the Hollywood Press Jarrett Hill, entertainment journalist.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming back. We've seen your work in New York Times, Essence, NBC News. Am I missing any big ones there?
The THR.
THR, yes.
That, yeah.
And I didn't mention this the last time you were here.
Oh, God.
You know, Jarrett is the one that, for viewers of Meet the Hollywood Press,
Why are you hiding over there?
hold on, discovered that Melania Trump plagiarized Michelle Obama. This is the guy. This is the journalist that discovered in a coffee shop as he was writing. This is the guy.
Sharp mind.
And
Very
I
sharp,
realized
yes.
that like after he appeared the last time when I was talking to Anita, and I was like, oh my God, we need to mention that when he comes back.
Absolutely.
Yes, and she's right.
Absolutely.
Very kind. Thank you very
So
much.
thank you for joining us
Yes,
again.
of course.
And also to my left is the entertainment editor of Queerty,
Hi.
a leading LGBTQ publication, which you just informed me has sees as much as 8 million unique visitors a month.
That's our average. We're actually passing that right now. Last month we hit an all-time high. So.
Congratulations.
Good work.
Nice.
He and I are on the Gallica too. Oh, okay, I shouldn't have said that. We're on this.
Thanks a lot, Joseph. Thank you.
The Gay and Lesbian
Entertainment Association.
Came to know each other, and he wrote the article about Bert and Ernie actually being gay.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Nice.
Yeah, so I was like that's where it really came to me. I was like, oh, you should be on the show. And he's like, okay. And it's like, here you are. Thank you for coming. Okay, let's jump into because the Grammy carpet's already underway as we talk about the Grammys under fire. So basically, I'm just going to jump right in here. So basically, right now, leading up to the Grammys, obviously, coming off the it's just been, I feel, nothing but a string of issues about the music industry with the Super Bowl performance, the Grammys, and so article that especially that black artists especially were not were declining invites. Even some of the biggest artists such as Kendrick Lamar, Childish Gambino, Drake, and then just as early as Thursday, Ariana Grande pulled out of the Grammys. She's a multi-nominated artist, and she just actually won because they started already announcing for best pop vocal, I believe it was. Hold on.
Album, I think you said.
Pop vocal performance, maybe?
Yeah.
For pop, hold on.
We know the pop part is in there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
pop solo performance. Got
Yes.
it.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Best pop vocal album for Sweetener. So she just picked that up after a very public dispute with the Grammy producer, who basically went on record saying she wasn't performing because they didn't have time to pull everything together. And she basically, Alina, we have the tweet, right?
Yes, we do.
She came out and basically, which by the way, more power to her, slammed the producer like
Ken Ehrlich.
Ken Ehrlich. Stop lying about me. Go ahead.
Yeah, so she says, I've kept my mouth shut, but now you're lying about me, because he pretty much said that she couldn't pull it together. So she says, I can pull together a performance overnight, and you know that, Ken. It was when my creativity and self-expression was stifled by you that I decided not to attend. I hope the show is exactly what you want it to be and more. Heart.
So at the core of this was that the Grammys are notable for putting together, which I think is personally sometimes the most hideous thing. These veteran artists with these brand new artists in these like Fukakta medleys or whatever you want to call them, and they basically didn't want her, arguably the biggest female pop artist right now of our, at the moment, to pick her songs that she wanted to perform. 7 Rings, which debuted at #1. They wanted her to perform stuff that she wanted to, that they wanted to choose, and she said no.
Right.
So what's your thoughts?
I mean, I don't love 7 Rings, so I'm not really that hurt about it. But I mean, if she was doing Thank You Next,
to be clear.
But that's not what we're talking about. I saw her response on Twitter, and I thought, like, good for her. Like, stand up for yourself. I do wonder how it will hurt her in the future. Yeah. Because Ken Ehrlich tends to produce a lot of award shows. Yeah. And that could come back to maybe bite her. But I thought, good for you. Like, stand up and defend your name. And, I mean, one of them is lying. But, like, either he's lying or she's lying, like, because both things can be true.
Can be true, yeah.
But I think, good for her.
I mean, it's interesting to me that they're still using her likeness so prominently in advertising for the Grammys, and she's not there. She doesn't want anything to do with it, and she's now slamming the producer. Yeah. It's a shame because, to me, the only appeal of watching the Grammys, quite frankly, is the performances. Yes. You watch it for the performances, not for the speeches. The ones that you want to see. The ones that you want to see. TiVo, the rest.
Right.
Yes.
It's sad, really.
So my thing, though, I want to hit on something. If this is just my imagination, and I would love female perspective coming in here, because last year we learned last week on our show, Variety executive editor of music told us that last year when Lorde didn't perform, it was because Lorde had a brand new album, and they wouldn't let her perform solo, like on the show. But she was even nominated, I believe, nominated or had a new album, but she wanted to perform. They offered her a slot to do a medley. She said no, like, I want to perform. This recurring theme, and I don't know if it's just these are the stories that leak out, is there an unconscious or an unconscious or conscious like sexist thing going on? Because more often than not, I feel like we're seeing these issues with female performers. Just like last year it was Grammy So Male, and now it's like they're nitpicking on the girls like that are performing. No, you can't be in a medley, but then this male artist can get his own showcase. What's your feeling there? Is this just me trying to make hay out of nothing, or could there be something going on?
I think definitely last year the problem was brought to full throttle with Lorde. I know that this year they were supposed to be making changes, and it was supposed to be a conscious change to include more women and all of that. And now with this, it's like, now I agree with Ariana. Like, as an artist, you want to perform the art that you want to perform. Yes. So I'm glad she stuck up for herself that way, and I think it'll be good for women coming up behind her, for next year. Like, don't fall to these people who are dictating what art you can perform. Yeah. So you're right. You don't see it with a lot of male artists. I don't remember
some big blow up with a male artist unless I'm like just not remembering. Like, where is it like this male artist is pulling out of the show? Because it just seems like, and I think that sometimes like longtime veteran, we were in this male-dominated Hollywood. They don't even like. I think it could be subconscious. Like, they don't even realize that it's like they're nitpicking the women. It's like, women are, if there's not any other time that women are empowered, it's right now.
Yeah.
Sure. Right. I mean, and this is not a problem that's unique to the Grammys either, let it be said. I think this, on a fundamental level is much more about this sort of artistic temperament versus the business temperament. Right. Yes. I'm remembering the VMAs used to have the same problem when Nirvana was asked to perform Smells Like Teen Spirit, and they were like, absolutely not. We want to perform a different song. But they at least reached a compromise, and that was 20-something years ago. So, you have to wonder if maybe the producers are tougher on women, a little less compromising than they would be with a male artist or an artist of a certain tier. It's hard to say, but
I think also artists are more empowered to say no to award shows, because like award shows used to be like one of the main places you'd see someone outside of being on a music video, but now we can see them on a million different shows. We can see them on Instagram. We see them on YouTube. We see them on. It's like, okay, we get it, Ariana. It's like, Yes. So I think artists also don't feel like the pressure to have to perform at award shows to be able to have big moments.
Yeah, because the ones that have big social media followings, as you mentioned, can drive ticket sales to their concerts through their own platforms.
Right.
Which I find to be the best change about the industry at large, whether it be music, TV, and film. The way that celebrities and artists have been able to grab hold of their messaging. Like, I love that she just went out there like, hey, I'm going to slam you. Like,
well, and
10 years ago, that would not be the,
Yeah.
oh, no, you cannot take on the Grammys. It would have been so taboo for an artist to go at the producer that way.
Well, and I mean, if you're Beyonce, you're like, I have 4 or 5 times more people following me on Instagram than are watching your little show. So, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's really cute. Thank you so much for the invite, but I'm going to do a post and everyone will talk about it.
Yes, it's so true.
Exactly.
Okay, so there's another article. Again, there just feels like there's all these like anti-Grammy sentiments leading up to the awards, and there was this really great article which I thought, and I want to get your guys' read on it, that it was basically black artists are declining to perform, and that's a good thing. Okay, so I'm just going to read just to give you an idea of what it was saying. So it was like Drake, Kendrick Lamar, Childish Gambino, all 3 have produced major hits over the last year, yet all declined invitations to perform on the Grammy stage this Sunday. While there has been no public comment thus far on their decision, there's a glaring reality hard to ignore. Even as music created by black artists continues to have undeniable commercial and cultural cachet, the awards they receive on Muse's biggest nights continue to be largely relegated to genre categories. Sure, you can have the biggest hit of the year. Sure, you can craft a genre-defying album to critical acclaim, but winning record of the year, album of the year, now you're still asking for too much.
I think Tamara Best, who wrote this article, like, she hit every single note perfectly.
I thought so too.
I thought she did an amazing job. I think what's frustrating to me about these shows is if we look at Beyonce, like we were just talking about her.
Yeah.
Lemonade was like a groundbreaking album, like objectively, right? If you're a Beyonce fan or not, like it was groundbreaking what she did with that album.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There was nothing that's ever been like it before, and it kind of set a tone for the future.
Yeah.
And Adele won. Right, Adele won for 25, which was, you know, a great album. But like, then Adele gets up on stage and says like, "Oh, I can't accept this. You're my queen." Da da da. And like, that's delightful. But like, but you know, Adele gets the title, she gets the statue, and she gets the historic like nature of like her win.
Yes.
We had this with Macklemore and Kendrick Lamar years ago. Like, oh, I don't deserve this. You should have it. And it's like, yeah, that's really really great. But like, you also now are in the history books of having won this. So.
I mean, I think it speaks to, and this might get me in trouble, but it speaks to a certain relevance of the Grammys as a whole. Because Tamara's points in that Daily Beast article are completely salient, but at the same time, I think it speaks to a larger systemic problem with the Grammys, which is, when was the last time a Latin, artist won, album of the year? When was the last time a country artist won album of the year? Everything is so, pigeonholed into different genres that the only thing that really wins is the sort of sanitized adult contemporary pop, mainstream music, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And obviously there are exceptions to that rule. Outkast, winning.
That's true.
Beyonce winning Song of the Year a few years back.
The interesting thing about the Grammys is that they did the same kind of overhaul where they were trying to invite more diverse members of the Academy, younger, but that kind of change doesn't obviously happen overnight. So they have recognized that it's happening. But my question in that is, why do you think, though, the Grammys have been so slow to catch up to its own industry? Meaning, like, I feel like music has led the way in a lot of other ways, whether it be the streaming business, the social media, the way that artists have really grabbed hold of social media. Why do you think, and then diversity, just in general, why do you think the Grammys, though, have failed to keep up with its own industry's evolution?
I mean, it is segregated. It's segregated by genre, and to some extent, that segregates by race, that segregates by gender, by all kinds of different, not just the audiences, but the artists themselves who are creating this music.
Yeah.
I don't know how you overcome that and even the playing field out a little bit more. But
well, I think even just if we're talking about the gender piece of it, I think we saw MTV this year, or last year, excuse me, they started to take away the gender elements of awards, right? And saying best music video, best song, best cameo, and all that kind of stuff. I think that is still a long way away from happening from the mainstream big awards. When we talk about the Oscars and the Emmys and the Grammys and things like that. But I think there is something kind of antiquated about the structure of award shows. And the way that it is always the voting of this largely white, oftentimes largely male, body of voting, of voters. So I think all of these institutions kind of have to kind of turn a mirror on themselves and look and say, like, are we reflective of our audience? And usually the answer to that question is no.
Yeah.
Sure.
Some of the music experts that you talk to about this are saying that the longtime Recording Academy president, why is his name? His name's escaping me. Not Ken, but his name will come to me in a second. He is going to be retiring or stepping down soon, and that the sentiment is that they really need to put a woman in charge.
Well,
this time around.
I think we saw with the Oscars when Sherilyn Isaacs was the president of the Academy. She was a black woman, and that was I think that first year was the year that Oscars So White happened, and I believe she was coming in as president. And correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes,
but like we also saw her take major steps to be able to make sure that the Oscars, the Academy looked a lot more diverse. And I think it's going to take someone taking a proactive step like that to say, like, we've got to do better to be able to make any kind of major changes. And I mean, the Academy is not perfect, right? The Oscars are not perfect yet, but it seems like they have made a step forward. I'll be interested to see what happens at the Emmys later this year, as we're talking about kind of award shows in a broader sense, because this was the first year that we saw network television had more diverse cast than all white casts. And I think that will make the award show a little bit more interesting. Come in September.
Also, Taylor Swift is not attending either. It's just interesting to me these younger mega female stars are just not going to the Grammys this year.
Maybe she got the memo that the Grammys is usually fairly boring, and she'd be better off watching the show at home.
Well,
that's
she's
just
filming.
true.
She's filming Cats right now in Britain.
Are they shooting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was reading about earlier.
Well, also, I don't know, just the thought of, like, I have it DVR'd and, like, I'm already feeling like, oh, God, I have a chore to do tonight.
It's like, I got to mop the kitchen, I got to wash the dishes, I got to watch the Grammys, I got to do the laundry. Like,
that's how I feel.
Does anyone remember the Bonkers Grammys from, like, was that 97 or 98 when there was, like, Bob Dylan was performing and there was the guy that, like, tore his shirt off and had soy bomb written on his chest?
I totally remember that.
And, like, what's her name? Leanne Rimes performed How Do I Live, and then lost the Grammy to Trisha Yearwood's version of the exact same song. It was just all this, like Will Smith and Jennifer Lopez almost got hit by the set, like, as it was, like, hydraulically rising out of the stage. It was all just really nutty.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, that would make me want to watch it.
Exactly. It's the same thing with the VMAs. It's like they're boring now. I miss the days when people were getting in fist fights on stage and getting arrested.
Or like when Howard Stern was like
Howard Stern
over
with the fart man thing.
So the VMAs, a friend of mine, and I was really upset about it, first of all, was like, you're not the audience for that show anymore, Jarrett. And I was like, the VMAs? And they're like, oh, I guess I'm not 13 to 25 or whatever it is. Like, but yeah, I do think the VMAs used to be more like iconic. I think all these shows used to feel more iconic back in the day. And
anarchic. That was the fun.
But I think it's also because we have so much access to these celebrities all the time, all these artists.
That's interesting.
That there's no mystique anymore.
I love when people though say that about the thing about award shows when they were iconic is they spanned generations. Because I could remember being a kid and your parents were in the room and you were watching it and everybody was like, oh my God. The fact that like people make comments like that, I don't really buy into, because you already know that MTV a long time ago lost the audience to YouTube. Like, they don't have the corner on that market. They're more like a soccer mom. Like, the Jersey Shore like age group is now like 30s, early 40s. That's not, so it's interesting to me that people would say that, because to me an award show should span across generations, Well, I think like the Grammys should. I don't know if the VMAs would.
Right.
I think the VMAs and MTV, like what are the movie and TV awards? I think those probably skew a lot younger, but like Billboard probably skews a little lower and younger, and I think maybe the American Music Awards skews a little older. Like, I mean, and it's like, it's the Grammys, it's CBS, it's not intended to be a young audience.
No. All right, well, I look forward to the report tomorrow of the ratings drop.
The deadline.
And we all know it's coming.
Okay, moving on.
Synopsis email in the morning. Grammys tank for 30.
Grammys tank, 30% down
next
year
they'll
over year.
Have best popular song category or something like that.
Although we are looking forward to at least seeing what Alicia Keys does with it, because I mean, how many years was LL Cool J? I mean, I get that he's on the network and everything, but I never understood.
I have no comment about LL Cool J.
Well, I didn't understand why he was the longtime host for all those years, but it's just because he was on CBS, I guess.
When we're off the air, I'll tell you about how terrible a host I thought he was of that show.
Okay.
Hot.
And I'll tell you, yeah, I just thought he was awful, but I won't talk about that on the show.
Okay, so we're going to move on to, it was like the week in media bombshells. So this, mind-blowing to me. Okay, so for those of you who haven't read the story, which would be impossible if you have been on the internet in the last couple of days, but Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world right now, and the owner of Amazon and the Washington Post, fired off a epic Medium post where he detailed allegations that the National Enquirer attempted to blackmail him and extort him. Blackmail him with like unseemly pictures, quote unquote dick pics. If he didn't,
Can we say that on this show?
yeah, we can say dick pics.
Oh, this just got completely different.
the beauty of a digitally native show.
Yeah.
Got to keep it real.
Yeah. So he essentially he came out there and basically beat, which I think AMI, who owns the National Enquirer and is in the business for years of shaking down celebrities for some of the most tawdry, disgusting kind of, I don't even call it journalism personally, what they do,
Right.
but he basically detailed the post and then also put out a bunch of breadcrumbs insinuating that it was politically motivated, that they were trying to get him to say that it's not politically motivated. What I want to start is what do you think this move that this dramatic move that he's made means for tabloids and gossip publications? Like, are we going to see a major sea change now?
I don't think we're going to see a major sea change, but I do know that when this happened, like there are rare instances where I'm like cheering on a rich white businessman who's like, sticking it to the man. Like that's rare. But I was like, good for you, Jeff Bezos.
Right.
Like that's what I loved about it. I think what's going to be really interesting to see is like what the ramifications of this are for AMI, because there's a lot of legal questions based on like their relationship with the Trump investigations and all that.
Yes.
But I thought it was great for him to be able, like, if anyone could say no, I think he probably could. Being the richest man and like, I'm not gonna succumb to these kinds of demands. I thought it was great for him.
Well, yeah, and for the audience where you just mentioned about this, so AMI basically signed they got an immunity deal for the payments that were made by Trump's former lawyer Michael Cohen to Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels. So, but they're checking in to see that immunity deal essentially said that AMI cannot commit any other crimes while they're under this blanket immunity deal. So their basically attorney went on air today trying to say that they acted lawfully, they didn't do this, they didn't. And he's also which was interesting to me. He said he wouldn't give up the source, but then he basically said, but the source is not, and he went down a list of like, it's not the Saudis, it's not Donald Trump, it's not, and because they were, George Stephanopoulos on ABC was digging in on if it was Lauren Sanchez's brother, who I guess runs in the Roger Stone Trump world circles.
He's a PR guy, David Sanchez, I believe.
Yes,
his name,
that's his name.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm thinking though, in the manner that he did this, do you think that this could be potentially though the start of other celebrities following suit? What better way?
I mean, I agree entirely with what Jarrett says in that it's not real journalism, the tabloids, and I think the question that's on my mind is, does this open up the Enquirer and AMI to a larger investigation as to their political dealings over the years? Because I remember very sharply that they said we have no political affiliation after they broke the John Edwards. Where he knocked up Riel Hunter and he was running for president. And I also know that Elizabeth Edwards tried to have the story killed, and that Picard's explanation was, oh no, we're not political, I have no control over this. So now we get to the point where we know he does have very direct control over this. We know he does intervene for his friends. So
well, and there was a story last year about them having like this vault of like stories that have been killed, right? And they're like these egregious stories that never got printed. Catch and kill, catch and kill. And then we saw, they'd been in this non-prosecution agreement since September. It came out in, I think, like December or something like that.
Yeah.
But it was alarming because it was like, wow, they have to they have to open up about everything they've ever done.
Yes.
And if they do anything to piss off, the prosecutors, they open themselves up to a world of hurt. And so I think that's why they're coming out now so vehemently, like, no, we didn't break a rule, we didn't do anything wrong, like there's nothing wrong here, nothing to see, kind of thing. Because I think they know that they've probably exposed themselves to so much already, and their testimony that they're in a really precarious position.
The Daily Beast article that also wrote about this was citing the editor-in-chief as could be subject in the Southern District of New York, like to coercion.
Wow.
Because basically, and they were like going through it's going to be really interesting because their headline was like, could the top leaders of AMI end up in jail for this? Really, I mean,
I think there's, I'm not a lawyer and I don't pretend to be one, but I think there's a high likelihood that this is going to get really ugly for them.
I think so too. So we're all in agreement on that.
Absolutely.
So we're going to just continue to see how that plays out. But I would just one more question before we move on to the next story. Do we think then you felt like Jeff Bezos, of like what regardless of what you said about like not usually cheering on the white guy that kind of owns half the world, but do you think in this case that even like he received praise from the newsroom of Washington Post for this because he went to Medium and actually did it, like he didn't want it to be like he was using his own platform that he owned, like a newspaper platform. Do we think then all the kudos that he's kind of received pretty much blanket across was deserved?
I think it was smart. There is like some kind of a conflict-y tone of doing it in the Washington Post as doing it as an op-ed, because there's already like attacks from the president calling, him, saying that, I think he actually says in the piece that he wrote that, the president assumes that because anyone in the Washington Post ever says anything about him that's negative, that I hate him, which, isn't really based in anything.
Yes.
So.
Medium allows him a very direct statement, and if I'm not mistaken, Medium does not have any ads, so it's sort of, it's airing a grievance on a public billboard, basically, kind of thing.
Yes.
I think it removes the filter that it would have had he done it through the Washington Post, had he done it through even a PR representative or an attorney.
Yeah.
I'm with you in that I have a hard time rooting for a lot of very rich people, who are talking about how hard life is. But the truth is, his privacy was violated. That's wrong, no matter who you are. And, he has the deep pockets to cause a lot of legal pain to AMI. So.
Yeah. One person who was actually talking about this, besides everyone who was, that's in the press, is Ana Navarro, who is, of course,
oh God, we love her.
Yeah, on a CNN contributor. I think she's also on The View.
She's on The View, yes, every Friday.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is what she had to say. She says, Jeff Bezos is uber rich. He controls his business, also has kids, parents, a wife, shareholders. Even rich people want to avoid embarrassment. Not allowing himself to be blackmailed took guts. It's a lesson for all of us. Number 1, confront things head on. Number 2, don't send naked selfies.
I mean, it's true. I lost so many dates because I wouldn't send dick pics.
I mean, in this day and age, like, just don't do it. And, like, when I see people put their face in it, I'm like, really?
What are you doing?
There's so many celebrities. I mean, just like not being a celebrity and being nervous to do that, but let alone you're a celebrity. Like, how about how many times, like, the DMs on Twitter, like, that you would get those exchanges between, like, major celebrities, and you're like, did they really write that? Like, in a... Pick up the phone.
I've had multiple instances as well where it's like, send me this. I mean, it's like, no. Are you kidding? Yeah.
Anyone's phone can be hacked. Anything digitally can be hacked.
Well, that's why I'm still paranoid of the iCloud. I'm so paranoid of the iCloud.
Yeah, I mean, I'm paranoid about the iCloud too.
I'm paranoid about Siri. Okay. She's always listening.
Siri's always
and
listening.
Alexa.
I'm most worried about Alexa because, like, she picks up way too much. Like, I didn't even say your name.
Girl is nosy.
Right.
she is nosy.
And then when you want her, it's like, Alexa. Sorry.
Yeah.
We're not talking about that now.
She's busy.
Right. It's like, I have other stuff to do. What?
All right, moving on to one more big media misstep, and then we'll get to a little bit of a lighter fare. Jill Abramsom, the former New York Times editor, very unfortunate turn of events. Her book came out, which is called Merchants of Truth, and it's about where we stand in like this age of journalism with all of these digitally native companies like the BuzzFeed, like Vice, and then, why truth is still so important and real good journalism is still so important. She wrote a whole detailed book about this, and no sooner did the book get released, Vice wrote an article basically calling out large pieces of the book that she essentially, quote unquote, plagiarized. Well, what it was, at least to her defense, was saying it was footnotes that weren't properly credited. So I ask, is this forgivable? Like, is this forgivable or completely unacceptable, given that the whole mission of the book is about really good journalism?
It makes me wonder what her editor was doing.
Yeah.
You know, truly, you could say it's misplaced footnotes, but isn't that the copy editor, the managing editor's job to make sure that everything is where it needs to be?
Yeah.
It's sloppy writing at its, you know, at its best, it's sloppy writing. At its worst, it's plagiarism.
Yes.
You know, I don't think there's any denying that.
I mean, I don't tend to comment on plagiarism stories, so.
Is there a reason?
I'm
for
kidding.
That?
I was like,
wait, what? No, I think what was interesting to me about this story was that the worrying. Going back to Melania, right?
Oh,
so,
I
like,
just got that.
Yeah. The biggest plagiarism.
That was like right over the head. So sorry. Oh my God.
Right. No. So going back to Melania and looking at this situation, what's interesting to me is that these are not word for word grabs, right? So like, there are words that are changed in certain places, which say to me that something precarious did happen.
Yeah.
Because if this was a citation, you're not going to change the words, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So in the CNN, she was on Reliable Sources with Brian Stelter, and they put up on the screen like the side by sides, and there were a few words that were changed, and they weren't like context words like he versus a name. It was like you switched around adjectives and moved things around. So that made me feel a little bit differently about it. When I read the story, I thought like, oh,
okay,
this could be an honest mistake and blah, blah, blah. But then I saw the excerpts and I was like, yeah, she did move. She or an editor or whomever did switch out words and change things around, which made me feel like maybe this isn't as she says it is.
Which was interesting too. So in case our viewers don't know, Brian Stelter was previously at the New York Times, so that was his boss. He was eating her. I was surprised. I was like, oh my God, like unrepressed anger from before.
Yes, exactly. Remember that time you completely canceled a story of mine? Well, now I got you. Yeah, it felt like that. It definitely felt like that.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? Anything to add to that?
I mean, like I say, it's sloppy writing. Even, you know, it sort of speaks to a certain shorthand if she's just going to take someone else's quote and change a few words around and think she's going to get away with it. I don't know why she would do that unless that she's either lazy or she's under a huge time constraint.
Well, she's not, though, because, I mean, my thing is she's not working full-time right now. Like, the book was what her job is right now. She's been out of work from New York Times for the last 2 years or something.
Then I'm going to say she's pretty lazy.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty lazy. I'm not going to lie. I think there was a certain level. She had said also on Reliable Sources this morning that she thought it was like a hit, like that Vice was like out to get her. But
I mean, I will say, like, someone really must have meticulously read that because there were a lot of instances where it was like, how did you even find
this?
Yeah,
and so. Vice cited one one instance, and I think it was Huffington Post later cited something like 7 or 8 more.
Someone else on Twitter. Yeah, there was a lot of instances that were found. So it was like, who was going through this and like running it through a system or whatever?
Well, apparently she did send the pages of the manuscript to the entities that she was writing about to give them a chance to respond and correct. And she said she corrected pieces of it that they sent. Then she didn't hear anything. So it was like, and then there was, oh, well, this is wrong and that's wrong after the galley came out. And I'm like, did they sort of like, because it's like you got the manuscript, so I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'm recently in a book, in a textbook, and like they sent me like the sides of what they were gonna write, right?
Yeah.
And they were like, "Is this correct?" And and I sent them like correction and like, "Oh, you know, switch this and But like, even when it came out in the actual textbook, I think it was still a little bit different than what I sent them. I'd have to go back and like cross-check them, but like it wasn't exactly as I remembered writing it. It was correct, and like they didn't say anything that was not you know based on what we had discussed. But I think those things continue to change, so I'm curious to see how that is going to play out for her.
I agree. Okay, so moving on. So. This is fun fare.
You
Guilty
have this
pleasure
smirk
fare.
on your face.
Yeah, because I'm Team Aniston, and I just love anything like that feels like a fun story or like something good. Anyway, it was her 50th, star-studded 50th birthday party last night at the Sunset Tower, and Brad Pitt showed up. It was her 50th. which obviously the whole entire, like, anyone who cares about them, the internet was just immediately ablaze. Oh my God, what does this mean? So I just want to mention it because it's like, we're not like, are they together? I want to more ask you guys, why do you think after all this time that there are so many people still fascinated with them after all these years?
It's as good a question as any I've ever heard. Because I've never had that fascination myself with anybody, any couple, you know. I don't get it.
Oprah and Stedman. Never mind. But I mean, I read the story and I was like, oh, okay. I don't know. Like, I was glad that it was her 50th birthday and not her 15th birthday, right? Like, if it was her 15th birthday, like, her ex-boyfriend showing up.
Far too long for that.
Well, no, I mean, I more so mean, like, if it was her 15th birthday, like, her ex-boyfriend coming would be a huge deal.
Right.
Oh my God, what is Mark doing here? You know what I mean? But it's like, she's 50 years old. They've been apart for years. Like, I would imagine, like, your ex is someone that you can have, like, a cordial conversation with.
It's nice that they're friends. Maybe they're revisiting the well. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe. I mean, neither one of them.
If I look like that, you know.
If Brad Pitt were my ex, I'd probably be inviting him to my birthday party too.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Do you think it's then a case of more that people tend to forget this, and even the media, celebrity, I should point to celebrity news media, because this is like the biggest story to a celebrity site right now. Whereas, you know, a site that covers the industry, this is like whatever. But do you think it's then, again, just that this became such a media circus around it, that they're really just two people that are like, they got divorced, he remarried, she remarried, and it's like, yeah, so now we're friends again.
I think people are holding on to it because they're both re-divorced and they're both seemingly single, and like, I think people want it to be something, but
I think sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, they're stars from before the whole social media era.
Yes.
We actually saw, like, now we see
so
relationships playing out. So then I think that's why people are holding on to it, because it's kind of like this. There's some mystery about
them, and they're also still not social media people. Like Jennifer has not gone on social, and Brad, I believe, is not either. Yeah, they're not on social.
This is a story, like, personally I don't care about, but I will say, as it's like the ultimate rom-com, right? Like, if they were to get back together at the end, it'd be like, oh my God, love is real. You know? So it's like,
they were meant to be.
They're right, exactly.
But that's what I'm gonna say. Like, on a personal level, I am not a person who has ever supported reconciliations, just because from my personal my personal experience is that I've never seen or heard about one that worked long term. It's always like, oh, we got back together, and you're like 5 months in, they're like, all the recurring problems. Oh, it remind us why we shouldn't have been together.
To be fair, I think when you have an ex and you haven't been together for a while, you do have a period of that, like, why didn't I like you? And then you go out to dinner with them, and like they're smacking their food and they're saying something stupid. You're like, oh, this is why I didn't like you.
Thanks for the reminder.
Thank you.
And they're not getting back together. At least we don't think so. They're just, you know, he's showing up to her birthday party, and let it be said too, Jennifer and Brad are both very, very media savvy and always have been. And would you have heard about this birthday party had he not shown up?
Well, also interesting, his other ex, Gwyneth, was there. Because Gwyneth was also there.
Gwyneth's everybody's ex.
Yikes.
Oh, God.
On that note.
Anyway, I was just curious to see what some smart folks thought. Like, why is so many people still fascinated? And I got my answer, so thank you.
Some smart people, and apparently us.
Team Aniston forever. Okay, so moving on from that to one more story. We're got a couple minutes, so we got to squeeze this in, but Liam Neeson, like, worst week ever, could we say?
He called that upon himself.
Oh my God.
Thank you. Like,
so his movie did terrible this week, and I didn't see you would know more than I. Were the reviews leading up to it already like bad, or is it totally
were pretty
this
rough from what I read? I don't think anybody's chomping at the bit to see him do another revenge.
So
Liam Neeson doing revenge? Tell me more.
Exactly.
I'm not familiar.
I mean, one of the great actors. It's a shame.
I just want to recap for really fast for anyone who was living under a rock this week, because this story went everywhere. He did an interview with The Independent where he obviously his guard was really down, and he proceeded to talk about an incident where he had a loved one. It was some time ago. Neeson had just come back from overseas to find out about the rape. Basically, a loved one was raped. She handled the situation of the rape in the most extraordinary way, Neeson says. But my immediate reaction was, there's a pause. I asked, did she know who it was? No. What color were they? She said it was a black person. I went up and down with a cosh, hoping I'd be approached by somebody. I'm ashamed to say this. And I did it maybe for a week, hoping some, and he gestures in the air with his fingers that this black bastard would come out of a pub and I'd have a go at him.
So, can I jump in here?
Yes, please.
So, two things. Number one, if you're the journalist who's interviewing him, this is one of those moments where you're like, well, I can throw out my notes because we have a whole other story here, right?
Yes.
I just, that is one thing. The other thing is like, we are all like media trained, and like Liam Neeson is not new to the game. No. And it's like, how do these words even come to like the back of your throat, let alone out of your mouth? Like, how do you even think that it's going to be okay to say this? I was so taken aback by this, but it's also like when you have an immense amount of privilege and you have an immense amount of money and you've been like winning in the game for years and years and years, I think there is like an invincibility that you kind of start to feel.
Start to develop.
I was blown away that he would even say this out loud. Not that he did it, but that he said it.
I mean, it's a crazy thing to say in an interview in front of your co-star and a journalist when you're plugging a movie. But let it be said too, it's not some, he was talking about something he was not proud of, and he talks in that interview about getting help after that, as in he recognized that this feeling was not rational and that it was not a cool thing to do or to feel, to expect, some kind of retribution, some, to seek revenge like one of his characters would.
There's no circumstance under which I would have been like, oh yeah, tell that story about the time where, tell that one. Because like we all know how headlines work, right? Like the headline is not going to be Liam Neeson sought revenge, but also felt bad about it later on when he thought about it, because that's not how that works. Like,
When I first saw it in my Twitter feed, I think it was like Monday it broke, I think. I think it was like the beginning of the week. I had to do one of those like Google where you look back to go, is that real? Like this tweet, because you start to think it's like a fake tweet. I was like I read like the first three. I kept reading. I'm like, wait a minute, like this is a real article. Like I couldn't believe it. But the interesting thing is said it was a flask of tea at his side. But that's debatable, I would think, right?
He had a flask of tea at his side?
at his side.
Irishman.
A flask of tea.
Has anyone ever put tea in a flask?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I mean, that was the interesting part. Okay, so what was the next leg of this was the defenses that were coming out.
By Michelle Rodriguez.
Yes. Can we talk about that?
Oh, God. H. Christ. So Michelle Rodriguez came out and said, like, oh, he can't be racist. Look at how he was kissing Viola Davis in Widows. And it was like, for one thing, like, that's not how racism works. Sweetness.
There's a lot of slave owners and slave.
But, like, I mean, as a black man, like, my first thought was, like, tell that to all the slaves who were like coerced into sleeping with their slave masters, right? But even like to bring it more current, like, do sexist men marry female-ass women? Like, yes, they do. Like, sexism and racism does not mean like you won't engage. Like, that was so mind-blowing to me. And Michelle Rodriguez, as a woman of color, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, are you even serious? She's come out and said that she was wrong and, all the things she's supposed to say. But, like, I was so taken aback by that. Like,
is this because this movie did really bad, is this a career killing?
No.
I mean, it's not Mel Gibson, so. But like,
who is still working, by the way.
Well, it took a while.
Is this let me ask some of your favorites. Is this Roseanne level? Is this what's his name? That James Gunn level? Is this
James Gunn's still working also. Roseanne, I think, knew her time was up.
Roseanne's in Israel making speeches right now. And
I don't think it's. I mean, this is like a first offense that I'm aware of.
Right.
And I think like had it been like, well, he's been a racist jackass for a long time. He said, I mean, maybe he has been, I don't know. But but because it's a first offense, I would think it probably is not going to be career killing for him.
No. And like I say, in the context of he recognized that his feelings were wrong. So, you want to give him the benefit of the doubt that hopefully he's not necessarily walking around still thinking these things.
Yeah.
He's British or Australian?
He's Irish.
He's Irish.
What he said.
Okay, because I mean, just geographically, there are places in Europe where literally they don't have. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Black people.
Black people.
You were nervous to say that, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
Just a little bit. I could feel that.
Yeah, right.
It's like they don't have.
No, because because I remember my like Australian friends that moved over here like decade ago, and they'd say, "Listen, there's really no black." Like, there's not a lot of
we
black
don't have
people.
exposure to black people.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, but like, even if that were the case, like, he's been here long enough.
Right.
Yeah. You know, like, that wouldn't be a plausible excuse.
Okay.
So,
yeah. He's been in LA long enough.
So we're all going to pray for him. We'll pray for Liam.
Thoughts and prayers to
Thoughts and prayers to Liam.
I might. I'll think about it. I'm more concerned about any of the people he might have run into on the street. Yeah.
Right.
But anyhow.
All right. Any other final thoughts about anything here?
Oh, wow.
It's been a week.
Yes, it
has.
It's been a week.
It's a crowded week.
I know you were intrigued by the Les Moonves story this week.
I know we don't even have time to get to it.
Man.
But yeah, Les Moonves return. He slinked out from under. Anyway, Les Moonves returned. He set up shop in not discreet at all, the 9000 building on Sunset.
Oh, wow.
I mean, he didn't put his name on the side of the building.
No. But you got to just kind of wonder, okay, I did prepare a question here. Too soon?
My perpetual question in these situations, whether it be Matt Lauer or Harvey Weinstein or whomever, is like, how long are they not supposed? Well, not Harvey Weinstein or Matt Lauer, like, because problematic.com. But I mean, like with the Les Moonves, none of these people have really gone to court yet. There's been no like real formal charges and all that. It's like, are they never supposed to work again? I don't know what the answer to that question is.
I don't think he's never supposed to work again. That's why I'm asking. Too soon.
I don't know.
I mean, to your point, there are levels to this, right? There's Harvey Weinstein is a rapist. There are people make inappropriate comments or just dickheads to work with.
Right. Al Franken is
Jeffrey
a little bit
Tambor, is not the same thing as Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah.
Fine. The bigger conversation that I'm interested in coming out of the Me Too movement is, when do you forgive somebody? When is the act of contrition enough?
Well, like, for that question, like, Les Moonves has never admitted to it nor apologized, so that's a different situation, right?
Very true, but I'm just saying generally, you know, there have been people who have come out and had extreme regrets, like Al Franken, for what they've done.
Yeah, so. I think, for like a mainstream community be able to re-receive that person, like, they've got to at least be able to say, like, yeah, I really screwed this up and this is what I did and I'm really sorry and blah, blah, blah. I think Les Moonves, I think it is a little soon. But also in the New York Times piece, there's a really interesting clause. I don't know if you guys saw in the piece, like, there's an interesting clause in his severance agreement with CBS that said they have to pay for his office space for a year.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Like, that was something in his agreement. And I'm like,
so they're paying for the space.
Well,
that's ballsy to even ask for. Like, how do you deal? Like,
and this is the other thing that should be said. If he weren't a super rich guy, would he be having this second chance at all, let alone this soon?
That's the more the issue, this arrogance of these God complexes of these powerful Hollywood executives. Where's the contrition? Before you start your company, could we get an apology? Could we get an explanation?
You're not going to get an apology if he's still denying that it happened. But I will say, like, I'm sure that he has this feeling of like, hey, I've got the money, I've got the background, and I'm sure there are a handful of people who are willing to go and work with him, because it's kind of going and leading a company.
Like, are women going to go work with him?
Probably not. But I'm sure there are some, right?
Will.
But
some
I'm
are thirsty enough too.
Yeah, and I think going and like leading a company with Les Moonves is kind of like becoming vice president when you know the president has a bad heart and some shitty karma, right? Like, this guy might go to jail, and I could probably run this. I think there's like that element of it, but also he's like a rich, powerful man who, led CBS into, a great number of years. I'm sure there's some people out there that will be willing to work with him, regardless of whatever allegations come out about him.
All right, then. Okay, so, Alina.
Yeah.
Would you like to tell everyone where they can find us?
Absolutely. You guys can watch us on the AfterBuzz YouTube page. You can subscribe to MTHP on Apple Podcasts. Rate us, give us those reviews and likes. Plus, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Meet the Hollywood Press and on Twitter at Meet the HWD Press.
Thank you, Jarrett. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
And thank you to our listeners and viewers. We will see you next week.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.